19th century Alaska, 1880. A land of raw beauty and unforgiving cruelty, where the biting winds carried the scent of pine and the promise of endless winter. For Anya, a 17-year-old with eyes as deep blue as glacial ice, it was merely the bleak, frozen backdrop to her undoing. She had grown up fast amidst the rough clamour of fur trappers and whiskey traders, learning early on that survival was a relentless negotiation. But nothing, not the biting cold nor the gnawing hunger, had prepared her for that specific biting autumn day. The air inside the cramped, smoke-filled trading post reeked of stale tobacco and desperation, a pungent mixture that clung to her clothes as her father, Nikolai, a man whose spirit had been chewed up and spit out by the wilderness, sealed her fate. A barrel of whale oil. The merchant, Silas, a corpulent man with a matted, greasy beard and eyes like cold river stones, boomed. His voice, thick with calculation, seemed to fill every crevice of the small, drafty room. "It's a fair price for an extra mouth, Nikolai. The girl is young, strong, and knows her way around a camp." Anya felt a visceral jolt, as if the icy air had solidified within her veins. Her small, calloused hands instinctively clenched into fists at her sides, but a chilling wave of futility washed over her. She knew, with a certainty that settled deep in her bones, that any defiance would be met with swift, brutal indifference. Her father, his gaze lost somewhere in the amber depths of the half-empty bottle clutched in his hand, merely offered a slurred, guttural grunt of agreement. She was no longer his daughter. She was a commodity, a transaction. The humiliation, sharper than any shard of ice, wrapped itself around her heart, threatening to suffocate her. Tears pricked at her eyes, but she blinked them back fiercely. Crying was a weakness she couldn't afford. The dreams of escape she had secretly nurtured, of somehow finding a path to a life of her own, now crumbled to dust. That single barrel of whale oil, which for others meant light, warmth, and sustenance, for Anya represented the brutal, undeniable end of her identity. She stood motionless, a statue carved from despair, as Silas measured her with his predatory gaze, a smug, avaricious smile spreading across his thick lips. The destiny that awaited her, unknown yet undeniably grim, loomed as vast and unforgiving as the Alaskan wilderness itself. It was a world where human beings constantly battled the raw, untamed forces of nature, and tragically often battled each other with even greater ferocity. Hope, she realized with a bitter clarity, was a fragile, expensive luxury that few could afford. And at that moment, Anya felt poorer, more utterly destitute than she had ever been. The future was a dense, impenetrable fog, and the chill that permeated her very core stemmed not from the external cold, but from the desolate emptiness within her soul. All she truly desired was to vanish, to disappear as completely and silently as the ceaseless snow falling outside the grimy window. Don't miss the next chapter of Anya's journey. Make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on what happens next. The journey with the merchant Silas was a blur of biting winds, monotonous stretches of frozen landscape, and an oppressive, chilling silence. Anya walked tirelessly behind his heavily laden sled, pulled by two sturdy, tireless sled dogs, their paws crunching rhythmically on the packed snow. Her meager belongings, a worn wool blanket, a small carved wooden doll, and a few tattered pieces of clothing, were bundled tightly in her arms, held close as if they were the last vestiges of her former life. The forest, a dense, ancient expanse of towering spruce and skeletal fir, seemed to swallow the already weak, diffused light of the Alaskan sun, deepening the shadows around them. Each arduous step was a battle against the deep, unforgiving snow, her worn, inadequate boots growing heavier with every meter, her breath misting into frosty clouds that vanished almost instantly. Silas rarely uttered a full sentence. His communication consisted of guttural grunts directed at his dogs, or harsh, muttered curses aimed at the treacherous terrain. Anya, surprisingly, found a strange, almost welcome comfort in his silence. It was a vast improvement over the cutting, cruel words she had grown accustomed to hearing from her father. They pressed on for days, the landscape blurring into a seemingly endless, desolate white expanse. The monotonous rhythm of walking, the cold and the constant awareness of her predicament began to blur time. Nights were spent huddled precariously by small, reluctant fires, their meager flames offering little warmth against the pervasive chill. The distant, mournful howling of wolves served as a constant, chilling lullaby, a stark reminder of the wild, untamed world that surrounded them. Anya ate the meager portions of dried meat and hardtack offered to her, her hunger a perpetual, gnawing companion in her gut. Her thoughts often drifted to her mother, long gone, a faint memory of warmth and gentle hands. She recalled the few, fleeting moments of shared laughter and quiet comfort they had managed to snatch before the crushing realities of life in the unforgiving wilderness had fully set in. A bitter question formed in her mind. Would anyone, truly anyone, ever mourn her absence? Or would she simply vanish from memory, a forgotten whisper carried away on the relentless Alaskan wind? One particularly frigid evening, as the northern lights painted the vast, inky sky in shimmering curtains of ethereal greens and purples, a truly magnificent yet hauntingly eerie display, Silas suddenly raised a mittened hand, pointing to a distant, faint plume of smoke curling lazily against the dark horizon. "That's old man Kuznetsov's cabin," he grumbled, his voice rough and devoid of any warmth. "Crazy hermit. Lives alone, way out there, away from everyone. Never understood why anyone would choose such isolation." Anya's heart, which had been a dull throb in her chest, began to hammer against her ribs with renewed intensity. Was this her new destination? The thought of an old hermit was, perhaps, less terrifying than the unspoken alternative she had imagined, yet it was equally unknown, equally daunting. As they approached the isolated dwelling, the air grew noticeably colder, the silence heavier, charged with the weight of her impending fate. Her future, as vast and mysterious as the Alaskan wilderness itself, loomed before her, shrouded in uncertainty. As the sled drew closer to the isolated cabin, Anya's gaze sharpened, taking in the details of her potential new home. It was small, undeniably, but appeared surprisingly sturdy, built from rough-hewn logs that had weathered countless storms. A thin, comforting plume of smoke curled lazily from its stone chimney, a stark contrast to the biting cold outside. Suddenly, a lone figure, heavily bundled in a thick fur parka, emerged from the cabin as the crunch of the sled on snow grew louder. He was a tall man, with a long, flowing white beard that almost reached his chest, and eyes, remarkably kind eyes, that seemed to hold the quiet wisdom of the wild, eyes that had seen much and judged little. This, Anya realized, must be Ivan Kuznetsov, the fabled Hermit. Silas wasted no time in his customary gruff manner, quickly explaining his purpose, the crude details of the trade, while Anya stood stiffly beside the sled, every muscle taut, awaiting the final decree of her fate. Ivan listened intently, his gaze occasionally drifting to Anya, a flicker of something she couldn't quite decipher in his weathered eyes. Not pity, but something akin to a profound, quiet understanding. "A barrel of whale oil," Ivan said slowly, his voice surprisingly gentle, a soft rumble that was a stark contrast to Silas's harsh, abrasive tone. He sighed, a sound like the wind whispering through dry leaves in late autumn. "A life is worth more than that, young man." Silas merely shrugged, his attention already focused on receiving his payment, the promised barrel that awaited him back at the post. Ivan then turned his full attention to Anya, his kind eyes softening further. "You must be hungry," he stated, not as a question, but as an undeniable fact, his eyes crinkling at the corners with a genuine warmth she hadn't encountered in years. He gestured towards the humble cabin with a large, mittened hand. "Come inside. It's warm within these walls. Numb from the pervasive cold that had seeped into her bones and the crushing emotional weight of the past days, Anya numbly followed him. The cabin's interior was a revelation, surprisingly clean, meticulously organized, and filled with the comforting, earthy scents of wood smoke, dried herbs, and something savory simmering. A large iron pot bubbled gently on the sturdy stove, emitting a rich, inviting aroma that made Anya's stomach rumble in protest. "Sit," Ivan offered, his gesture encompassing a small, rough-hewn stool positioned perfectly by the roaring fire. He then ladled a generous bowl of thick, steaming soup, a simple, hearty broth rich with tender vegetables and flakes of fish. It was, without a doubt, the warmest, most comforting thing she had tasted in days, a small, unexpected act of pure kindness that began to gently crack through the thick layer of ice around her heart. She ate slowly, savoring each spoonful, allowing the warmth to spread through her chilled body as Ivan watched her in comfortable, unhurried silence, his presence a silent assurance. Days bled seamlessly into weeks, and Anya found herself falling into a routine unlike any she had ever known. Ivan, the enigmatic hermit, proved to be a man of remarkably few words, but profound, impactful actions. He patiently taught her the vital lore of the wilderness, how to distinguish edible berries from poisonous ones, their vibrant colors a deceptive lure, the intricate art of setting snares for small, swift game like rabbits and squirrels, and the silent, almost spiritual discipline of tracking through the newly fallen snow, reading the subtle signs left by unseen creatures. He shared stories of the land, ancient tales of the animals that roamed its vastness, and grim, awe-inspiring accounts of the brutal Alaskan winters, his voice softening with each narrative, imbued with the wisdom of experience. Anya, in turn, began to help him with the ceaseless daily chores, finding a quiet, unexpected satisfaction in the rhythmic, purposeful labor of their isolated life. The small cabin, once a place of forced refuge, was slowly, imperceptibly transforming into her true shelter, a sanctuary both physical and emotional. One tranquil evening, as a ferocious blizzard raged outside, its icy breath rattling the cabin walls and whistling through every crevice, Ivan sat by the dancing flames of the fire, his large hands meticulously mending a fishing net. Anya, across from him, was carefully patching a stubborn tear in her increasingly worn coat, the fabric coarse beneath her fingers. The silence between them was not awkward, but deeply comfortable, filled only by the hypnotic crackle and pop of the burning logs and the mournful, distant howl of the relentless wind. Suddenly, Ivan looked up, his gaze steady and serious, meeting her eyes across the small space. "Anya," he began, his voice a low, raspy sound, like dry leaves scuttling across ice. "You have no proper family name, do you?" She shook her head slowly, her throat tight with a sudden, unexpected emotion. "My father. He never spoke of one. We were always just Nikolai and Anya." Ivan nodded slowly, a profound understanding in his kind eyes. "Then from this day forward," he declared, his gaze firm and direct, radiating a quiet authority that resonated deeply within Anya, "you will carry my last name. You are Anya Kuznetsov." The words hung in the warm, quiet air of the cabin, weighty and utterly unexpected. Anya stared at him, tears, hot and unfamiliar, welling in her eyes, blurring the edges of the firelight. It wasn't just a name, it was an identity, a sense of belonging, a familial connection she had never known, never even dared to dream of. It was a profound gift of acceptance, a recognition of her inherent worth that transcended her past as a simple commodity. For the very first time in years, a tiny flicker of hope, warm and incredibly fragile, ignited within her, spreading through her chest like the gentle warmth of the fire. She was no longer just Anya, the girl tragically traded for a barrel of whale oil. She was Anya Kuznetsov, and the vast, unforgiving world suddenly felt a little less cold, a little less desolate, and a little more like a place where she truly belonged. This is just the beginning of Anya's transformation. To witness her full journey and support her story, make sure to subscribe to the channel right now. Life with Ivan continued, a quiet balm for Anya's deeply wounded soul. Each day brought new lessons, not just in practical survival, but in patience and observation. She found a profound, almost spiritual solace in the vast, untamed landscape, learning its secrets and rhythms. The towering spruce trees, the shimmering rivers, the silent fall of snow, all became a source of quiet strength. Yet even amidst this newfound peace, the lingering shadows of her past refused to fully dissipate. She often woke in the dead of night from restless, fragmented sleep, her heart pounding, haunted by the vivid, painful memory of her father's distant, hollow gaze and the merchant Silas's calculating, avaricious eyes. Ivan, with his keen, almost preternatural observations, noticed her quiet struggles, the subtle tension in her shoulders, the way her eyes would sometimes cloud over with unspoken sadness. He never pressed her for details, never forced her to speak, but his constant, steady and understanding presence was a powerful anchor, a silent invitation to share when she was ready. One crisp afternoon, while foraging for deadfall firewood deeper in the silent forest, Anya stumbled upon something unexpected. An old, half-buried wooden toy, a crudely carved but recognizably charming figurine of a bear. It was weathered and worn, its edges softened by time and the elements, but undeniably a child's plaything. A sudden, unexpected wave of raw emotion washed over her, a poignant mix of nostalgia and aching loss. The small, unassuming toy immediately transported her back to the simple, innocent joys of her early childhood, fleeting moments of warmth and play before life's harsh, unyielding realities had fully set in. Before despair had settled upon her father like a suffocating shroud, she clutched it tightly, the smooth, cool wood, a tangible, comforting link to a past she rarely allowed herself to revisit, a past she had deliberately locked away. That evening, as they shared a simple yet satisfying meal of freshly caught fish stew, the aroma filling the cozy cabin, Anya found herself speaking. Her voice was hesitant at first, a fragile whisper in the quiet. Then it gained a surprising strength, words tumbling out in a torrent she hadn't anticipated. She recounted fragmented memories of her life before Ivan, the ceaseless, nomadic existence, moving from one desolate trapping camp to another, the constant gnawing struggle for basic sustenance, the pervasive hunger that was a physical ache in her stomach, and the crushing weight of her father's deepening despair, a burden that seemed to grow heavier with each passing season. She spoke, too, of her mother, of how she had tried so valiantly to shield Anya from the worst of their poverty and misery, before ultimately succumbing to a relentless, unnamed illness that had swept through their camp years ago. Ivan listened patiently, his wise, ancient eyes never leaving her face, their gaze steady and compassionate. He didn't offer facile platitudes or empty reassurances. He offered no easy solutions to the deep-seated pain. But his silent, unwavering empathy, his deep and active listening, was a profoundly powerful comfort, a balm to her long-held wounds. Sharing her story, even in these broken fragments, felt like shedding a heavy, suffocating burden she hadn't truly realized she was still carrying. The past was still there, undeniably a part of her, an indelible mark on her soul, but now, perhaps, she could begin to truly understand it, to integrate it into her present, and even, eventually, to begin the long, slow process of healing. As autumn bled into winter, the Alaskan landscape transformed into a vast, silent expanse of white. The days grew shorter, the temperatures plummeted, and the cabin became a haven against the relentless cold. Survival became a daily ritual of meticulous planning and hard work. Ivan, despite his age, was remarkably resilient, and Anya, under his tutelage, became equally adept. They chopped and stacked endless piles of firewood, melted snow for water, and meticulously checked their snares. The silence of the long winter nights was broken only by the crackle of the fire and the occasional howl of a distant wolf. One particularly brutal storm trapped them indoors for days. The wind shrieked like a banshee, and the snow piled so high against the windows that the cabin was plunged into a perpetual twilight. Anya worried about their diminishing food supplies, the isolation weighing heavily on her. Ivan, however, remained calm, his presence a steadying force. He taught her how to play a simple board game carved from wood, and they spent hours by the fire, their conversations sparse but meaningful. During this time, Anya witnessed Ivan's deep understanding of the wilderness. He could read the signs in the snow, predict the weather changes, and always seemed to know where to find sustenance. His knowledge wasn't just practical, it was intuitive, almost spiritual. She realized that his isolation wasn't a punishment, but a choice, a way to be truly connected to the land. As the storm finally broke, leaving behind a world sparkling with fresh snow under a crisp, clear sky, Anya felt a profound shift within herself. The long winter had tested her, but it had also forged a new kind of strength and resilience she hadn't known she possessed. Just as spring began to hint at its return, bringing with it a subtle thawing and the promise of longer days, an unexpected intrusion shattered the quiet solitude of Ivan and Anya's lives. One crisp morning, as Anya was checking their traps, she spotted them, two figures heavily bundled on the horizon, heading straight for the cabin. Her heart immediately pounded with a mixture of fear and trepidation. Visitors were rare, and usually they brought trouble. She rushed back to the cabin, alerting Ivan. He calmly retrieved his rifle, his expression thoughtful. "Stay inside, Anya," he instructed, his voice low. As the figures drew closer, Anya recognized one of them with a sickening lurch. Silas, the merchant who had traded her for the whale oil. The other was a younger, rougher-looking man. They arrived at the cabin, their faces hardened by the cold and their intentions unclear. Silas, with a forced smile that didn't reach his eyes, explained they were just passing through, heading to a new trapping ground and needed shelter and supplies. Anya watched from the shadows, her stomach twisting. She could feel Silas's gaze on her, a fleeting, unnerving acknowledgement. Ivan, ever the gracious host, offered them a place by the fire and a warm meal, but his eyes were sharp, missing nothing. The tension in the small cabin was palpable, a silent battle of wills. Anya knew Silas hadn't stumbled upon them by accident. His presence was a stark reminder of the life she had escaped and a chilling warning that her past might not be as far behind her as she had hoped. The return of Silas brings a new layer of danger to Anya's story. Don't miss how this tense encounter unfolds. Subscribe now and hit the notification bell so you're always updated. The presence of Silas and his companion, a taciturn brute named Kyle, cast a long shadow over the cabin. Anya felt a constant knot of anxiety in her stomach, her senses on high alert. Silas, despite his outward cordiality, frequently stole glances at her, a possessive glint in his eyes that made her skin crawl. Kyle, meanwhile, was openly hostile, his presence a silent threat. Ivan maintained a calm demeanor, but Anya noticed his subtle vigilance, how he always seemed to be between her and the visitors, his hand never far from his rifle. One evening, as Kyle stepped outside for a moment, Silas approached Anya, his voice deceptively low. "You've grown, girl," he sneered, his breath smelling of stale whiskey. "Thought you'd be a good worker, but I didn't think you'd land yourself with a rich old hermit." His words were laced with an insidious accusation, implying a bargain beyond simple trade. He hinted at unpaid debts and broken agreements with her father, suggesting Anya was still his property, something to be claimed. Anya's blood ran cold. She knew he was lying, trying to manipulate her, but the old fear resurfaced. Before she could respond, Ivan stepped between them, his towering figure eclipsing Silas. "She is a Kuznetsov," Ivan stated, his voice quiet but firm, radiating an authority that even Silas couldn't ignore. "And this is my home. You will treat her with respect, or you will leave." The air crackled with unspoken tension. Silas, sensing the shift in power, backed down with a grumble, but the unspoken threat remained. The cabin, once a sanctuary, now felt like a cage, and Anya knew their unexpected guests would not leave without causing more trouble. The tension reached its peak on the third night. Kyle, emboldened by alcohol and Silas's vague promises, made a move towards Anya, attempting to grab her. Anya reacted instinctively, her movements quick and desperate. The small cabin erupted into chaos. Ivan, his age belied by his swiftness, intervened instantly. A struggle ensued between Ivan and Kyle, their bodies crashing against the furniture. Silas, seeing his opportunity, tried to seize Anya, but she fought back with a ferocity born of desperation, fueled by months of learning to survive. Anya grabbed a heavy iron poker from beside the stove, her heart pounding in her ears, and swung it wildly, connecting with Silas's arm with a resounding thud. He cried out in pain, stumbling back. Meanwhile, Ivan, despite a blow to his head, managed to disarm Kyle and send him sprawling. The fight was brutal, a desperate struggle for survival in the confined space. The air was thick with grunts, curses, and the splintering of wood. Finally, Ivan, regaining his footing, leveled his rifle at Silas, his eyes cold and unwavering. "Get out!" he commanded, his voice a low growl that brooked no argument. "Both of you, and never return." Silas, clutching his injured arm, exchanged a furious glance with Kyle. Defeated, and realizing they were outmatched, they stumbled out into the cold night, leaving behind a silence heavier than any before. Anya, trembling, leaned against the wall, the poker still clutched in her hand. Ivan, bruised but resolute, looked at her, and in his eyes she saw not just relief but a deep, unshakable bond. They had faced the past together, and they had won. In the aftermath of the confrontation, the cabin felt cleansed, the lingering threat finally gone. Ivan tended to his minor injuries, and Anya, despite her trembling hands, helped him. The experience had forged an even deeper connection between them, a quiet understanding that transcended words. The bond they shared was not one of blood, but of shared hardship, mutual respect, and unspoken love. Anya had faced her past demons, and with Ivan's unwavering support, had emerged stronger. As spring truly took hold, melting the last of the snow and coaxing new life from the frozen earth, Anya found herself thriving. She no longer carried the weight of being a mere commodity. She was a Kuznetsov, a woman of the Alaskan wilderness, capable and resilient. She continued to learn from Ivan, not just about survival, but about patience, wisdom, and the quiet dignity of a life lived authentically. They expanded their garden, repaired the cabin, and continued their routines, now with an added layer of peace. One bright morning, as Anya stood by the river, fishing with a net she had helped Ivan mend, she looked back at the small cabin nestled amongst the trees. It was more than a shelter, it was home. Ivan emerged, bringing her a cup of warm tea. He smiled, a genuine, content smile that reflected the calm of the land. Anya knew her life had been marked by a cruel trade, but it had also led her to an unexpected, profound gift. The Hermit had given her soup, shelter, and his last name, but more than that, he had given her back herself. And in the vast, wild beauty of Alaska, she had found her true place, secure and free. What an incredible journey. Thank you for watching Anya's story. If you were moved by her strength and resilience, please subscribe to our channel for more compelling stories of human spirit and survival. Your support means the world to us.